everyone. We will begin, as is our wont, by joining palms, bowing, and reciting the four great vows. So join palms, bow. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings of self-nature. I vow to cut off endless vexations of self-nature. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma of self-nature. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood of self-nature. Oh, welcome everyone. It's good to see all of you gathered here today. Um, I've chosen what to me is a bit of an ambitious topic for today's investigation and exploration today. And this is purely as a consequence of the present study material that I'm going through. I'm still working on this 10 Grounds Sutra, because I am famously slow with regards to studying. Gilbert has encouraged many times to, if you don't understand what you're reading, don't go any further. And I can't say that I follow that 100% of the time, but it's not uncommon for me to have an hour of study where I don't make it much past a single paragraph. So rather than try to go through all 10 of the boomies, I thought that it would be helpful for us to maybe just concentrate on one, the first. So what are these 10 boomies? Well, these 10 boomies are famously important in Mahayana doctrine. Um, and they appeared quite a long time ago. According to the Mahayana tradition, they first appeared in the Avatamsaka Sutra, but many modern day academics they believe that the Ten Grounds Sutra, which is what I'm studying right now, the Ten Grounds Sutra, was first and it was later incorporated into the Avatamsaka. It has been referenced by many, many other teachings, with many commentaries written on it. It was actually a commentary that the 10 Grounds was referenced that first got me interested in reading this. I was doing my deep dive into the Awakening of Mahayana Faith treatise, and I saw in one of the footnotes that it mentioned that famous line that I use oh so frequently, that the three realms are mind only and all the dharmas are just consciousness. That it first appeared in this sutra, the Ten Ground Sutra. That's at least what I remember, and that's what got me interested. I still haven't encountered that line yet, and it's possible that this translation just might not make it appear in a form that I recognize, but still, I've been getting just so much benefit from reading this sutra. So this sutra first began to appear around the first between the first century BCE and CE, right around the same time as the Vimalakirti Sutra. Vimalakirti was supposed to show up around 100 CE. So, what does this sutra describe? What do the 10 bhumis describe? So, on a surface level, we could just look at this as being a description of levels of attainment. And this is something that has existed in the Buddhist tradition for a very, very long time. The Theravada tradition has their own description of levels of attainment. You know, they've got your stream entry, your once returner, your never returner, and your arahat. So those four levels of attainment. And the way that I am most intimately familiar with these actually comes from the Abhidharma. And so the Abhidharma describes them in terms of their interactions with the fetters, these unwholesome mental factors. So stream entry is looked at as being the point at which the first three fetters are cut off. This is the wrong views of a self, the doubt in the triple gem, and clinging to rites and ceremonies. Because one of the things at the time was this belief that if you just follow these certain ceremonies, you just follow a certain set of prescriptions, by smearing yourself with ashes, by being a naked ascetic, that this would be a way to moksha, to liberation. And the stream entry, this belief, this particular attachment falls away. So now it's clear that that's not actually the fact. And when this occurs, it says in the Abhidharma that the practitioner who has realized this level of attainment has at most 7 lives left. So they will only come back and be reborn 7 times at the max. There is the once returner, and in it, no fetters are eradicated according to the Abhidharma. But there is this reduction in the effect of the more coarse forms of sensual desire. So things like looking for really good food or amazing sights or gross sensual pleasures. Those drop off. There is the never returner. I should say that the once returner uh, only is reborn one more time in a sense realm, in the desire realm. The never returner has now successfully cut off all sensual desire and all ill will. And if they don't go on to attain the final level, then they will be reborn one more time, but not in the desire realm. They'll be reborn in a fine material sphere, so in a super awesome deluxe heaven, where they will attain the final level and no longer appear. The Arahat is the final description of attainment in the Theravada tradition. And this practitioner has cut off all desire for fine material and immaterial existence. So at the lower levels, there's still like, yeah, I wouldn't mind going to one of those super cool, awesome heavens. That would be pretty cool. I'm not so enthused about all of the trappings of the desire realm, but man, those heavens still sound really cool. The Arhat, they've exhausted even this desire. And they've also exhausted conceit, restlessness, and ignorance. So they are never again to be reborn. They have gotten out of Dodge. And this description is very simple. It's cut and dried, relatively speaking. The 10 boomies could be interpreted as something analogous to this. And I've even seen some comparisons, like a stream entry is about equal with this level of the boonie. Well, never returner is about this level. Even in this sutra itself, it talks about the level of a practice of an arahat. Um, is unequaled by the level of practice of a practitioner on the first through the sixth bhumi. It isn't until the seventh bhumi that their levels of practice are comparable. But there is a problem with this interpretation, and I'm going to hop into the sutra, and we're going to explore and investigate this a little bit. So, in the sutra so far, there has been a description of the assembly that's gathered, and it is, this vast assembly of bodhisattvas who have incredibly exalted practices and realizations. And the central figure of the sutra is a character by the name of Vajragarbha. Vajra being like that diamond-like substance that cuts through all obstructions, and Garbha being like the womb. So it's the same as the Tathagata Garbha, the womb of the Buddha. So this is the womb of that diamond wisdom that cuts through all obstructions. And the Vajragarbha has just entered into this incredible samadhi and had this just amazing experience where his or the Bodhisattva's awareness spread out into all of the 10 directions. And instantly, all of these Buddhas appeared, and all of them were named Vajragarbha. And they all praised the Bodhisattva Vajragarbha. And they all, touched his head simultaneously and rubbed his crown. So just this incredible, unbelievable, unimaginable experience. And Vajragarbha comes out of this great samadhi and wants to present the 10 grounds. Sons of the Buddha, what are the grounds of knowledge of the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas? So one of the translations of Bhumis is ground. Bhumi and ground mean the same thing. So the grounds of knowledge of the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas are these 10 Bhumis. Sons of the Buddha, the grounds of knowledge of the Bodhisattvas are 10 in number. All Buddhas of the past, present, and future have proclaimed them, do now proclaim them, and shall proclaim them in the future. It is for the sake of these very grounds that I set forth such a proclamation as this. What then are the 10? They are, and he just goes on to list them very simply. First, the ground of joyfulness. Second, the ground of stainlessness. Third, the ground of shining light. Fourth, the ground of blazing brilliance. Fifth, the difficult to conquer ground. Sixth, the ground of direct presence. Seventh, the far reaching ground. Eighth, the ground of immovability. Ninth, the ground of excellent intelligence. Tenth, the Dharma cloud ground. Sons of the Buddha. All Buddhas of the three periods of time have proclaimed these 10 grounds in the past, do proclaim them in the present, and shall also proclaim them in the future. I have not seen that there exists any Buddha land anywhere wherein these 10 Bodhisattva grounds have not been proclaimed. And remember, Vajragarbha just had this experience where Buddhas appeared in all these infinite realms, in all of the 10 directions. So Vajragarbha's awareness has just been to all of these places. And why is this? These 10 grounds constitute the Bodhisattva's most supreme and sublime path, and the most supreme gateway into Dharma's light and purity. We refer here to the differentiation of these matters pertaining to these 10 stations. Sons of the Buddha. These matters are inconceivable. We refer here to the wisdom of the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas as they progress through the grounds. So he makes this grand proclamation. Says, these are the 10 grounds. This is a teaching that has always been taught, will always be taught, and is being taught by all of the Buddhas. Then, having set forth the names of the Bodhisattva's 10 grounds, Vajragarbha Bodhisattva Mahasattva fell silent, remained in place, and did not proceed to present a differentiating explanation of their meanings and import. What Vajragarbha is doing here is making just the most supreme and incredible type of presentation by not going any further. This is very much akin to the thunderous silence of Vimalakirti, who, when all of these different bodhisattvas were trying to describe their understanding of non-duality, Manjushri said that, oh, it simply cannot be described. And when it came to Vimalakirti's turn, he remained silent. So this is an incredibly important indication of um, what we have to bear in mind, how we have to consider the sutra in order to begin to peek beyond its mere surface, to go beyond the words. So when Vajragarbha stops talking, the entire assembly is like sitting on the edges of their seat. Um, It says that the entire congregation of bodhisattvas all gazed up at him with thirst-like anticipation, wishing to hear him set forth an explanation. So they were like, "Oh, you said these ten grounds. You have to say more than just that. We want to know. We have to know." And so the other central character in the sutra presents itself, the Bodhisattva liberation moon. So the rest of the sutra is just kind of mostly it's Vajragarbha describing things, but it's interspersed with Liberation Moon having additional questions, requesting clarifications from time to time. So Liberation Moon essentially says, come on. You have to tell us more about this. The entire assembly wants to know. I am aware of the entire assembly's thoughts, and we're all just unified, just waiting for you to hear more. So after Liberation Moon requests a bit more, Vajragarbha explains his silence. He says, the matter of the practices of all bodhisattvas is the most difficult of subjects to fathom. A differentiating explanation of these grounds, the very origin of all Buddhas, is a matter subtle, sublime, and extremely difficult to perceive. This is not something that is accessible to thought. It comes forth from the wisdom of the Buddha and is such that if one hears it, one may become submerged in confusion. When we encounter a line like this, it should encourage us that if we're listening to exposition of the Dharma or if we're doing our studies, we have to, instead of focusing so much on, remember last week talking about the functioning of consciousness being to split things up into these neat little packages to differentiate, instead of examining, instead of listening with this type of mental activity, it's something that is felt at a much deeper level. So we have to move beyond thought to this deep feeling, because if we're just attached with the thoughts, if we just begin to like, okay, you gave me the 10 grounds, well, let me write them down, and I'm going to make lists next to each of them. And let me tell you, if you enter into a study of the 10 grounds that way, the sutra will let you, because it will provide list after list after list after list. But if this is the way that you engage with it, it's like trying to get through a door by knocking your head on it instead of reaching for the handle and turning it. So we don't want to just keep knocking our head on the door of the sutras. We want to feel it at a much deeper level, a level that is not accessible to thought. So those whose minds have a capacity for retention as solid as Vajra, who possess a profound faith in the wisdom of the Buddha, and who take it to be the most supremely sublime, it is these minds who would remain free of doubts and difficulties. So what he's doing is he's describing the minds of all of the bodhisattvas who have gathered there. Those who have transcended thoughts conceiving of a self, and the ground wherein thought is active. It is only bodhisattvas of this sort who are then capable of hearing this, or capable of feeling this. So, those who have transcended thoughts conceiving of a self, and the grounds wherein thought is active. So one of the ways that I imagine these 10 grounds. So the 10 grounds is like it's the beginning. It's the entry. It's the beginning to realize that which is no beginning. So if you look at a pool of water and it's a still pool, you'll see that it's covered in reflections. It's reflections maybe of the sun, the moon, the clouds, but when you look at this pool of water, all that you see are the reflections. And this level is the level that ordinary sentient beings abide. So they cannot actually see underneath the water. They can't see deeply into the nature of reality because all that they do, all that they are, is this involvement with reflections. And so the description of these 10 grounds is the first peering underneath the surface, underneath or beyond the ground wherein thought is active. And so, where thought is active, this is the consciousness that is always cutting things up, always making them into neat little packages. And so, it is bodhisattvas who have transcended these thoughts conceiving of a self or other, who are capable of hearing this. So, Vajragarbha is recognizing that there's a big problem, even in talking about this, because there are going to be so many who are attached. Um, and as he says, when others who delight in lesser dharmas hear of extremely profound and inconceivable matters such as these, they may well bring forth doubts and regrets about them. People such as these will then be bound to undergo all manner of ruin and torment for a long time. It is because I feel pity for such people as these that I have therefore become silent. So rather than even potentially putting pitfalls in the paths of sentient beings, Vajragarbha's compassion is such that he would rather remain silent because those whose wisdom has not yet become utterly brilliant, who follow consciousness rather than knowledge. So consciousness, vijnana rather than knowledge. And this is the jnana or jnana. Um, this is not knowledge having the command of ideas, because that would be consciousness. This is direct knowledge. Sometimes Gilbert refers to it as the gnosis, mind knowing mind. So who on hearing this will generate doubts and regrets. So the liberation moon bodhisattva is not done entreating. And it says, O son of the Buddha, aided by the powers of the Buddha, please skillfully differentiate these inconceivable dharmas, these matters born, and the protective mindfulness of the Buddhas. Um, Because when it comes to the skillful explanation of the meaning of the 10 grounds, the Dharma of the Buddhas of the 10 directions require that they should extend their protective mindfulness to all bodhisattvas in this circumstance. And I'm skipping a little bit further here. But it says, the Buddhas shall provide their protective mindfulness and shall bestow the aid of their spiritual powers, whereby others will be caused to develop indestructible faith and acceptance. When I encountered these teachings, these phrases, what it gave me this feeling of was the feeling that um, as it's described in the awakening of Mahayana faith, that Shastra that I've talked about here a few times, it talks about there as being two different types of influence that permeate or perfume mind. And the first of these is the one that we're probably a little bit more intimately familiar with. This is the permeation of ignorance. And that ignorance is what leads to the belief in a concretely, separately existing self and leads to all of the various afflictions and karmas that are born out of these afflictions. But there is another type of influence, another permeation. And in that treatise, it describes it as the permeation of suchness. So This suchness, as we talked about last week, is the undivided mind, the true mind. And this mind is always reaching out. It is always trying to influence and help sentient beings. And so it is this mind that we rely on, the protection of this mind when we are studying these deeply profound sutras. And this is what Liberation Moon is pointing out, that the Buddhas shall provide their protective mindfulness and shall bestow the aid of their spiritual powers, because this permeation or influence of suchness, it is just the activity of mind itself. And it's not something that's outside. It's not something that's inaccessible. It is always at work. And so when in our studies and in our practice, we can let go of this mind of attachment, this mind of cutting things into pieces, this consciousness. Then the influence or the permeation of suchness can begin to present itself. And more than just interacting with the concepts involved, with the Dharma that we're listening to or the Dharma that we're studying, there is this sense of movement, of this deep understanding. The first glimpses of what this sutra just described as knowledge or jnana, a a much more direct perception of reality. So not just being confined to the level of reflection on top of the pool, but instead actually being able to feel the water, to know that the water is actually there. So because Liberation Moon Bodhisattva has been so sincere and so diligent in requesting, eventually Vajragarbha finally relents. And he relents only at this point because now the way that we must approach has been communicated. There is now a possibility of our understanding how to make use of this material. And Vajragarbha says the path of the Buddhas, the lords among the Aryas, is subtle, sublime, extremely difficult to comprehend, and inaccessible to realization through thought's deliberation. It is a region coursed in only those possessed of knowledge. So you can see coursed here, and when Avalokiteshvara was coursing in the deep Prajnaparamita, this is what he's talking about here. Its essential nature, from its origins on forth to the present, is quiescently still and without either production or extinction. So Vajragarbha, now that he's agreed to talk about this, Vajragarbha is now setting forth some of the essential underpinnings of right view, that it's quiescently still without either production or extinction. From its origins on forth to the present, it is that emptiness wherein all sufferings and torments are utterly extinguished. It departs far beyond all the destinies of rebirth and is characterized by its identity with nirvana itself. In it, there is no middle, no end. It is not amenable to description through words and phrases. It transcends the three periods of time, and in character is comparable to empty space. If you'll remember last week, the detecting good or even evil karma and requital talked about the Dharma body or the true nature of empty space being such that it is always supportive. It always supports. So I'll skip a paragraph here. The wisdom of the Buddhas transcends the path of the mental factors. So right here, I view this as being very much a dig at the Abhidharma. So in the Abhidharma, mental factors are looked at as being an absolute component of reality. It's something that's irreducible. You have your chitta, consciousness. You have your cetasikas, mental factors. You have rupa, materiality, and then you have nirvana. And in the Abhidharma, these four are looked at as being irreducible universals, with only nirvana being unconditioned. The others are conditioned. But Vajragarbha is saying that the wisdom of the Buddhas transcends this path, an understanding in accordance with viewing all of these things as being intrinsically real unto themselves because they're empty. So the wisdom of the Buddhas cannot be conceived of by thought or described in words, and is not a place where an aggregates, sense realms, or sense bases exist, because they're illusion. They are as real as the reflection on top of the pool. One can only come to know it through knowledge. This is that jnana, that undivided awareness. And as such, it cannot be reached through the consciousnesses because the consciousnesses are all about this division, cutting things up. Remember, that's the word. It is vijnana, vi meaning divided or separate, jnana being knowledge. And this knowledge that it's describing here, that knows the wisdom of the Buddha, is wholly undivided. It is as difficult to describe as the track of a bird through the air. How then could one succeed in revealing its aspects? The meanings associated with the 10 grounds are just like this. They are not such as a mind, but boundlessly vast, can ever know. Although these matters are difficult, one brings forth vows, coursing thence in kindness and compassion. And that's a very important part about the first Bhumi, which we'll get into as much of that as we possibly can. I just kind of want to, there's this little bit here that I love very much. Um, It's the last two paragraphs of this sentence. Attend upon it with single-minded reverence as receiving the power of the Buddhas. So Vajragarbha Bodhisattva is now receiving the power of the Buddhas. I proceed here to speak with the great voice, the lion's roar, proclaiming in a manner reliant on analogies the concepts and designations in a mutually non-contradictory way. So talking about that which cannot be divided, cannot actually be described in a way that is not actually contradictory. An incredibly difficult uh, task, only capable with the power of the Buddhas. In doing so, the immeasurably vast spiritual powers of the Buddhas shall now all reside here within my person. So all of the Buddhas are now present in Vajragarbha. Even so, that upon which I proceed to expound here will be comparable only to a single drop in what is a vast sea. Wonderful. And now Vajragarbha is ready to talk about this first bhumi, this first ground. And out of all of the ones that I've read so far, this is actually has the most pages dedicated to it. So I wholeheartedly apologize for not being able to do it justice. But we're just going to go over a couple things that I feel will be applicable and helpful in our practice. So it begins with the description of a good practitioner. If there is a being who has assembled thick roots of goodness, cultivated the good practice, and again, I'm going to be skipping around here, made offerings to the Buddhas, who has for the most part tended towards implementation of kindness and compassion. So he's not even describing a practitioner or a being who is perfect, just for the most part has tended towards implementation of kindness and compassion, and who delights in seeking the Buddha's wisdom. A being such as this then becomes capable of bringing forth the resolve to gain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. So this should be a term that is familiar to us. The supreme, perfect, unsurpassed enlightenment. And this is presented full force in the Heart Sutra. For the sake of acquiring the knowledge of all the modes, for knowing about all the possible ways of being, for the sake of achieving the complete fulfillment of the dharmas of Buddhahood, for the sake of rescuing all worlds, for the sake of purifying the mind of great kindness and great compassion. So all bodhisattva mahasattvas bring forth this very sort of resolve. So we don't have a whole lot of people with their cameras on, but who has taken the bodhisattva precepts? So those who have taken the bodhisattva precepts, congratulations. You have made this resolve. You are the type of practitioner that's being described here, and you have been capable of bringing forth this great resolve. So, and then it describes this resolve. This resolve takes the great compassion as foremost. In everything that I read, study, and all of the people who I follow to listen to their talks, to see how they advise one to practice, this is what I pay the most attention to, that this great compassion is foremost. And, I've studied with a lot of people at Dharma Drum. I've studied with a number of Dharma heirs. And the principal reason that I follow Gilbert as my Sherfu is because I can feel this compassion most clearly from him. And it's not that I have a doubt in the compassion of the other heirs and the other presenters, the other masters, but my affinity and resonance is such that it's very clear, it's very plain. And this is something that I, like the sutra says, take as foremost, this great compassion, and then with wisdom as its predominant condition. So this compassion isn't, as one commentator described, as sloppy sentimentality. It's like, oh, you feel you're in pain, you're having a rough time. I feel very bad for you. Let's commiserate about your bad feelings, and maybe then everybody will feel better, but at least we'll be in the misery loves company type of thing. But this wisdom is an absolutely essential component, as it says even here, the predominant condition. And it goes on to describe more qualities of the Bodhisattva's resolve. But then there's the consequences of generating this vow. And the Bodhisattva when the Bodhisattva brings forth just such a resolve as this, he immediately passes beyond the grounds of the common person. So is no longer fully restricted to that 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 false layer of reflection on top of the pool. Immediately begins to sink down into the water. Enters the station of the Bodhisattva. Even if you haven't gone to take the precepts ceremony, if this is something that you honestly and sincerely feel, congratulations. You can immediately enter into the station of the Bodhisattva. Not in such a way that you can, put a sign around your neck saying, "Hello, my name is Bodhisattva," and like, "Hey, you wanna pat me on the back? Look at me. I'm a Bodhisattva. I'm always going to be here for you." That's That's more like on the surface level of things again. And believe you me, even after having sunk down underneath the surface, sometimes the perceptions are such that you can't see underneath the surface again. And you have to continually practice, and you have to be running the right view for the mind to be able to see underneath the surface again. Becomes born into the clan of the Buddhas, acquires a lineage that none can disparage. So a bodhisattva is such that um, there is a greatness to them, a greatness that has to be recognized. So it can't really be disparaged unless there's some truly gnarly stuff going on. Passes beyond all worldly paths, enters the world transcending path, dwells in the bodhisattva dharmas, um, and becomes definitely bound for the ultimate realization of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. So the bodhisattva who dwells in dharmas such as these is known as one who dwells on the ground of joyfulness. So we finally come back to the title of the first ground that, oh, it seems like so long ago that Vajragarbha shared with us. This is the ground of joyfulness. And it's called that on account of the Dharma of imperturbability, because a bodhisattva has this patience about them. There is this imperturbability. Causes and conditions never fail. Things are going the way that they're going. And maybe through this practice, things aren't going according to the way that I imagined. But this is the bodhisattva path. And so that's okay. Whatever it is that arises in mind, whatever it is that arises in the environment, that's okay. This is the practice field. This is the ground of joyfulness. So the bodhisattva who abides in this ground of joyfulness is endowed with abundant joy, abundant faith, abundant purity, abundant ebullience. And this is one I actually had to look up this word. I can't remember ever having encountered this word. It's like cheer and energy. So it's like just this enthusiasm, abundant enthusiasm, abundant pliancy. So the bodhisattva is not rigid in beliefs. It's not rigid in dogma. There's this pliancy, there's this flexibility, abundant tolerance, abundant disinclination to disputatiousness. So doesn't get involved with fighting, doesn't get involved with all of the activities that sentient beings become involved in that create fractures, that set one group against another group. These are my friends, those are your friends. You stay on that side of the wall. I'll stay over here. Um, the Bodhisattva is disinclined to this type of behavior. Abundant disinclination to harming or interfering with other beings. There's this recognition that pratitya samutpada, causes and conditions never fail. All sentient beings have their causes and conditions. Now, all sentient beings have their idiosyncrasies, their likes and their dislikes, and you don't harm them. You don't try to make people less the way that they are. We simply just try to help people see what's actually going on. And the changes happen for themselves. If we're trying to change people, trying to change their characteristics, well, that person, they're too angry. I'm going to make them less angry. The mind has already seized on a reflection. The mind has already gone back up to the surface and is saying, we need to make this reflection different," instead of dwelling on that ground that is underneath, the ground that sees the reflections that as they are, and instead has this. this heart-to-heart connection, an abundant disinclination to anger. So, sons of the Buddha, those bodhisattvas who dwell on this ground of joyfulness, have joyful thoughts due to calling to mind the Buddhas, have joyful thoughts due to calling to mind the Dharma of the Buddhas, having joyful thoughts due to calling to mind the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas. So, it describes all of these kinds of joyful thoughts that are just very naturally arising. One of the things that really struck me very clearly today, as I was studying, as I was preparing for this, is it has to do with how to view these 10 bhumis. Because if we're viewing them as these 10 concrete separate stages, here's a stage, even to use my analogy. So you're underneath the reflection and, a centimeter underneath the water. That's the first bhumi. And another centimeter, that's the second bhumi. This is not the most productive way to use this. As I was reading this, it suddenly dawned on me that what the boomies are doing, what this exploration, it's telling about, it's revealing the functioning of mind. And so at the shallowest levels, there's simply more obstructions that are present. And when the obstructions are present in an incredibly great degree, then there is the mind of suffering, the mind of me, my, and I, and the identification as an ordinary sentient being. But as these obstructions begin to, even if they don't disappear, but they become more transparent, you can see through them. And so they're not so uh, triggering, they're not so enticing. You don't follow them instinctively. Then there is this clarity. And with this clarity, a different type of activity is revealed, a different level of the functioning of mind. So, at the most shallow functioning of mind, that is the apparent functioning of sentient beings. But as these obstructions begin to be resolved, and that's one of the ways that, so the text that I was reading recently, the Samdi Nirmochana Sutra, and one of the ways that it looks at or examines these 10 bhumis is the obstructions that are present. And so it talks about for the first stage, there is the obstruction that prevents the realization of this kind of mind activity is the obscuration of exaggerated adherence to persons and phenomena. So this exaggerated adherence is the adherence, the belief in concretely real separate entities and concretely real separate phenomena. So this is the separate beings and also there's real materiality, there's real mental factors, there's real consciousness, there's this exaggerated adherence. And once this begins to resolve or dissolve or become see-through, naturally, what is revealed just underneath the surface is this joy. Sometimes they'll call it the Dharma joy. And this is the joy that comes from seeing things as they are, the very first dawnings of it. Normally, as an ordinary sentient being, we experience many joys. We experience the joys of success, professional and personal. We experience the joy of the taste of wonderful food, the company of good friends. There are all of these joys that can come about. But the signature feature of these joys is that they are fleeting. They will be around for a little bit and then they will depart. But Dharma joy is not this way. Dharma joy is just like the sound of silence. It's always present. And when not so involved with separate things as separate things, this clarity is penetrating. And the first thing that it sees is joy. So there's all of these joyful thoughts. So, and these joyful thoughts as they appear are very spontaneous. Now, one of the practices that I most certainly engage in is the practice of Nianfo, bringing to mind the name of a Buddha or a Bodhisattva. I've actually got a handful that I use. And as I do this, I bring to mind, so so it says, joyful thoughts due to calling to mind the conduct practiced by the bodhisattvas. So for me right now, the last time that I went to Taiwan, I discovered this strong resonance with Garbha Bodhisattva, Earth Store Bodhisattva. And so as I do a lot of the exercises that I do in my morning routine, I chant this Bodhisattva's name. I bring to mind the characteristics, the actions, the practice of this Bodhisattva. And it's something that carries along with it just this natural joy. And it's not like a joy that's going to make me jump up and down and like, yeah, woohoo, joy. It's a very quiet kind of joy. It's just like that sound of silence. It's just like a little shininess, a shininess to reality. So in addition to having all of these joyful kinds of thoughts, there is also um, all types of fearlessness are immediately left far behind. So it gives a description of several kinds of fears, but fear naturally begins to fall away because as our strong adherence to a separate self begins to diminish, what is there to be afraid of? Because there's just the mind. And this mind is Buddha. And the influences of the Buddha, the permeation of suchness is always at play, such that as the mind is turned towards it, the resolution of these fears is present. So I'll share a personal one for me. You know, coming to a group like this and presenting the Dharma to a group that my master has been presenting for a very, very long time. These are I view you all very highly. I hold you in high esteem. And so when I am coming to a group like this to present the Dharma, all of these fearful feelings arise. Fearful feelings, oh, what if I don't do a good job? What if I can't present the Dharma? What if I look bad? All of these self-concerns with the fears that are coming along with them. And the more that I present the Dharma, the more that I'm clear about these types of thoughts. And when they arise, instead, there's just this redirecting of the mind. The mind is not confined to this level of me, my appearance, and the winds that can blow me this way or that. Instead, the mind is directed straight back into mind, that this is just mind, and that the permeation of suchness is at play. And so this is a very powerful kind of faith. What this sutra might even go so far as to describe as an abundant faith. And when the mind is redirected in this way, the thoughts may still come, but they don't have the weight behind them anymore and they depart. And what's left in their place is this joy of the Dharma, because the thoughts of the Dharma come. And the thoughts of the Dharma aren't such that they should be clung to. Oh, I had a good Dharma thought. Let me get out my paper so I can write it down. Yeah, that's a good one to share with people later. Although I do that too. If I could pan my camera around, I'd show you that I'm surrounded by books and I'm surrounded by all of these papers with notes. I actually have 5 pages of notes that I wrote at different times, just scattered everywhere. And at this point, I'm not looking at them at all. But the Dharma flows, and the joy that is experienced by witnessing, by mind being aware of this is just natural. And the activities that are spontaneously engaged in are different than they were at that surface level. And so, as the sutra goes on to describe all of these various levels of the bhumis, it says that certain obstruction has faded, and now the bodhisattva is engaging in all of these kinds of practices. I remember Master Huang Bo talking about specifically the paramitas. And he said, you shouldn't focus on just doing the paramitas all the time. When there's an opportunity to practice them, practice them. And then once that opportunity is passed, you let it go. You don't think about it. And so if we are to engage with these 10 bhumis, with this mind of consciousness, with this mind of cutting up and splitting, we can look at one of these lists of practices and say, ah, yes, this is what it is all about. I must always be doing this. This is my new purpose, my new function. But this is just a conceptual level. Mind naturally functions. And at the level of the ordinary sentient being, it functions in a way that it looks like suffering. It looks like life and death, birth and death. And it's natural for it to be functioning that way. But there are so many deeper levels to mind. And as we practice, as it said in that sutra, the Sutra of Detecting Good or Evil Karma and Requital, as we cultivate faith and understanding by relying on the one true reality, this mind, the mind of suchness, the mind that in truth cannot be divided, but in division can be. As we cultivate this faith and understanding, mind is revealed. Mind reveals itself. Mind reveals itself not so much in ideas, but in this activity. And in the beginning, it is the activity of these joyful thoughts and the activity of giving rise to great vows. It's it's natural and spontaneous. We can jumpstart, we can participate in the various rites and rituals that promote the exposure of these. But it's in feeling the heart of them, in bearing witness to them being born and blooming from the strata of mind that we begin to know, not via concepts, but know, as it describes in the sutra, as jnana, this direct knowledge. And as the practice naturally continues, more and more of this mind is revealed. And this description of the bhumis is a description of these realizations as mind reveals more and more of itself, all the way until there are no obstructions whatsoever. And all of mind, all of it, uh, is known. And this is the description of the Buddha stage. But this is just the Buddha mind. This is the functioning of mind when obstructions have been penetrated. So I hope that you've gotten a little bit of a feel for how to use this particular sutra and maybe even other sutras. Gotten a little bit of encouragement to shift outside of this mind of splitting, this mind of conceptual examination to this heart-mind feel. Um, I, I hope that you've gotten yeah a feel for it. So we've reached the end of the time. I could go on and on and on. These sutras are so wonderful. You just can't approach them like just some dry, this dry parchment or this dry paper to get from one end to the other. I just got to get to the end of this sutra. I gotta get to the end of this treatise so I can start on something new. All of them are just precious doorways. And I hope that you can experience them as such. So thank you all so much for listening to this blather, this trashy talk. Amitofo. So I will be very happy to take any questions. And we got Tori up first.
Yes, thank you, Ian. Thank you so much for the really wonderful, auspicious talk. Um, I do have a question. Um, so I was, I listened to Gilbert and also Master Sun Yan and other people, other monastics talking about the Dharma joy, especially relates to unified mind. And of course, it's definitely taught that we don't chase after that because it's not permanent. It's an experience. And but then you talked about how Dharma joy is actually it's always there. And I understand the analogy that silence is always there. So it is real, right? I mean, everything it's all mind. It's technically real. So how do I work out that difference that between these two types of teaching, I would say. Yeah. Thank you.
So the joy that comes from unified mind as a separate state is going to be some kind of phenomenal joy because you're right. It's something that has a beginning and it has an end. And so it's phenomenal in nature. You can draw borders and boundaries to it. And so it's not it's not this joy of the first ground of a bodhisattva because it's something that's temporary. And then the mind returns to its former functioning and clinging to this, rejecting that. But in a lot of the teachings, it talks about there has to be some kind of great stability, some samadhi that allows the mind to initially penetrate this first layer of illusions. And so when they teach that this Dharma joy has something to do with unified mind, that's where I would interpret. It has something to do with unified mind because it's the stability of mind that enables the penetration of the perceptions of phenomena as real. And so these aren't two separate things, but there is a phenomenal joy that accompanies unified mind. And there is a Dharma joy that can be revealed by it. But when the mind slips back into its functioning via habitual tendencies, that true Dharma joy is once again obstructed. So it can't be seen, can't be experienced anymore. It doesn't mean that it's not there because it very much is there. That's in some of the teachings they talk about joy or bliss as being one of the true characteristics of reality, in as much as you can describe reality with any characteristics.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your question. Santa.
Oh, what a treat. What a treat. Thank you so much, Ian. Very sublime and inspiring, in that the meaning of the word inspire is to breathe in. So you breathed in your ebullience into us. Thank you. Deep appreciation.
No, it's something that I'm very glad that you could feel because at the end of the day, I besides that feeling, all that I can do is throw words. But trying to communicate that feeling in a way that is accessible, that's
Yes.
that was my function today.
The Dharma joy flowed through. Thank you.
Jake.
Yeah, Santha beat me to it, but I wanted to. I love how much you love to teach. It really does come through. My question is, I think along a similar line to what Tori asked, this analogy of Dharma joy to the sound of silence,
Hmm.
um, sort of implies this kind of stability, and it sort of emphasizes to me that this Dharma joy is sort of like a property of mind. It's a functioning of mind. It's not our perception of piercing through that surface level, because that's the phenomenal aspect of that joy rather than the sort of more stable thing that's coming from mind and not from our reaction to it. Um, and I don't know if that's a correct understanding, but that's what that analogy sort of communicated to me, and I thought that was very nice.
So you can kind of think about it using that analogy as the joy is like the wetness of water. And so until there is the touching of the water, there's no understanding or experience of the wetness. But as soon as there is that intimate contact with the water, as soon as there's that intimate contact with mind, the joy is just there. It couldn't not be there. But again, it's not this phenomenal kind of joy that we quest after. It is the questing after joy that actually prevents the direct experience of the intrinsic joy of mind.
Thank you, Ian.
All right, Sam.
I too also wanted to make a joke as Santa and Jake were planning to, but I was double beat. Uh, uh, um, I just want to first thank you again, Ian. It's a great privilege to get to have you teach not only 1 week but 2 weeks. So this is a treat, as Santa said, and I really appreciate the way you teach. As I said last week, it's very clear. There's a lot of I can only describe it as harmonious feeling. It's just such a you can tell and feel the teaching, and it's coming from such a pure place, and I appreciate that so much. And this isn't as much of a question as it is more so showing a gratitude because um, I've had a few realizations tonight that I realize now I've had an aversion to the 10 boomies in a sense uh, up until now because I realized I had a worldly understanding or a misunderstanding rather of what they actually are. I kind of pushed them away and wouldn't, I guess, look at them or try to study them or penetrate them because I thought, oh, I'm going to fall into in attaching to them as achievements or clinging to them as a mark of progress or things like this or something to attain, right? And I realized that's my own incorrect views on how what the boomies really are. And I started to kind of get a rolling on it as you were talking, and then you basically said what I was starting to come to see was the boomies are not stages or attainments or things like this. They are just the natural functionings of mind, and it seems as though it's this unfolding or
Yeah.
this revealing of the how the true mind functions as untruth or the deluded mind, uh, though illusory, as it crumbles away, that's what becomes apparent are these boomies. And I can't thank you enough for making that so clear because uh, up until today, I was a bit scared of them because of how how I attached to them and things as such. So just incredible how you were able to convey that. Thank you.
Well, I will make a confession, Sam. When I was picking this up, I had a very similar attitude. Like I'd encountered that line in the commentary saying, "Oh, this is the first place that we've recorded that one very famous saying." And I was like, "Well, I guess I got to look at it now." But everything that I know about Chan, it's like saying like stages aren't that good, and you don't want to reveal this and that. And so I kind of went dragging my feet a little bit.
Hmm.
But I did just find immediately so much use from it. But it wasn't until I was preparing to present it. Because after I'd presented last week, I had another presentation. I was like, well, what am I going to present? I can only present when I'm studying. And so I really started to look into it. I really started to contemplate it deeply, not as just something to get through, to find that line, but how can I share its heart? And when I started to investigate it in that manner, that's when it became clear. It's like, oh, this is what it is. It's not that I thought it was at all. It's something completely different. And if you ask me in 10 years what this sutra is about, uh, I'll say that it's something different because something deep will have been communicated in the meantime. It's not any one thing. It's a door. It's a door to the Dharma. It's a door that can be stepped through, and the house can be explored, and and that's it.
Absolutely. Again, I could go on and on myself, but I can't thank you enough again. So
Thank you,
amitabha.
Sam.
Okay.
We've got Tom Bombadil, a merry old fellow.
Thanks, Ian. I appreciate it. My question's only a little bit tangentially relevant, but I hadn't really even considered that this was possible until your remarks just now about taking precepts in a ceremony. Because before I found this little community, I sort of didn't think that Chan lineages still existed, which I realize in hindsight is like ludicrous, right? But what do I know? I'm just some random guy. Is this something that I can do with you all at DDM?
Absolutely. I would hugely encourage you to take the Bodhisattva precepts.
Yeah,
Um,
how does it work to be involved? The closest place, I guess, would be Chicago.
I don't know that they do it in Chicago.
Hmm.
Senta's got something to say.
Yeah, so basically every 3 years or so, you'll have an opportunity to take the Bodhisattva precepts.
Hmm.
Keep your, ears attuned, and maybe if anybody hears about it, make sure you announce it in the forum. So let's make sure that people get this opportunity. And when that happens, Tom, typically the ceremony would be held in each of the major centers here in the US.
So,
So
sorry, you cut out there at the end. Each of the major centers.
in the US.
What can I have a short list of the major centers?
Well, I know it was held in definitely New York, definitely in LA. I'm not sure where else.
Okay, New York
At
is
least
probably doable.
say that again. I'm sorry.
New York is probably doable. My family is
Right.
all in that area.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, and it's such a moving and beautiful ceremony. Just like, you know, um, when I took the Bodhisattva precepts, I was like, here is the devotional aspect of Chan,
Mhm.
and here is the mantrayana aspect of Chan, the esoteric. So it's just beautiful. I would heartily encourage, if anybody gets a chance to do the Bodhisattva vows, do it. It's beyond just like a few lines that you agree to take on. It's just beautiful.
So it looks
The
like
monastic
Sam
liberty.
says that they also do it in Chicago as well.
Excellent. Because
If I could just
somehow
add real
before
quick,
I
Tom.
Oh, take the refuge in 5 precepts, but not the
Yeah,
Bodhisattva
the
precepts.
the
yeah,
lay precepts, right?
Tom. Yes, if you'd like, in April when Guoguang Fashe visits, she's a monastic and Dharma heir of Master Shengyan.
Hmm.
If you'd like, you can ask Iris specifically because not every retreat do people take them, but the monastics are always willing to hold a 3 refuge ceremony and the lay precepts too, which is also very important. So I
Sure.
hope you are able to do that.
I'll try to find a way to make it work. When something's important, you try to make it work out as best you can.
And one of the things that Gilbert has talked about a lot is the demonstration of mind, the demonstration of the Dharma. And taking part in ceremonies like this is very much a demonstration. It is protecting the lineage, like you said, Tom, that you didn't even know that Chan lineages still existed, and that's because there's there aren't huge activities. There's not a lot of exposure. And so when we become involved via our practice, we become part of that exposure. And so because of our involvement, because of the demonstration of our practice, the Dharma persists in this realm. The Dharma continues, and more sentient beings have an opportunity to encounter it. So it's important, and if you have the opportunity, I very much would rejoice in your doing so. So, Rosalind.
Yan, thank you so much for your sharing, Amitabha. I
Amito.
also want to thank everyone who arranged for this forum. I really, really learned a lot and benefited a lot. Last week, I shared about the annoying pain on my neck. I am pleased to update that many things happened since then. Few of you wrote to me privately to do this and that, and I really appreciate the community, the support that is given to the group. What happened was, Ian, you gave very good advice on how to sit, etc. And in Singapore, I attend the Buddhist Union, which features the Medicine Buddha. So 2 weeks ago, the Shifu said you should offer flowers to the Medicine Buddha. And on Sunday, I offered flowers and oil, actually oil, flowers, and candles. It comes in one set. And it was Sunday itself, Sunday morning. We had chanting from 10 to 12:30. After that, I went back to home to rest. And I remembered my cousin, Ken Ru, who introduced me to this Chan Buddhism, etc. We met on Saturday. He told me to look at Pilates exercises. So I used the YouTube and I found 7 Pilates exercises. And being a typical Singaporean, we call kiasu kiasi, meaning that you're scared to lose, scared to die. You would try everything. I did all the 7 exercises. Of course, I was really tired. I had a shower and I bathed. And when I woke up, a miracle happened. The 90% intense pain that I've been suffering since 1st of October disappeared to just 10%. I just cannot believe it. but miracles do happen. And Ian, you mentioned about, praying earnestly, diligently. Trust me, I'm praying earnestly, diligently, because when you have a irritating neck pain that refuses to go away, it just, your life is just kind of destroyed, although I'm quite young. The other thing I also realized that maybe to share to other people in the group as well, in addition to just exercise, diet is extremely important. So I've been reading up about diet, and I live alone in Singapore. So we've got lots of good food in the hawker center, but the nutrition level is almost zero if you look at what's in the ingredients. So I kind of revamped my lifestyle. And I think with a lot of prayer, exercise, and nutrition, it will improve. And whatever pain you have, will go away. And yeah, I'm just eternally grateful to this group and Ian, and the sharing is like, wow, things that I think, is it right, is it wrong? And you just say, do it like that. I say, hey, that's what I've been doing for the whole year, but I didn't know whether it was right or wrong. And some people think that I'm doing the wrong way. So you get kind of confused. But I like what you're teaching. Thank you. Thank you, Ian.
I was just flipping through trying to find a quote for it, but I couldn't immediately identify. But one of the things that it talks about in the sutra is that, we definitely we become wise not only into the ways of the Dharma, but in the ways of the world. So things like exercise and diet, these are skillful means by which we can establish affinities with other sentient beings so that there can be this trustfulness that can grow. And so all of these new tools that you've just located, these are things that when the time is right, when you encounter someone who might be in a similar situation, you can share it with them. And in doing so, you'll be able to develop that affinity. There'll be that closeness. And then you can continue to share the benefits of your practice. And you can continue to expound on what you've already learned. And there's nothing at all wrong with becoming skilled in the ways of the world. This is something that, for those of us who did not give up our family life and we're lay practitioners, we do. We don't ignore the various things. I personally, I love the order in which this unfolded for you, in that you had this sincere devotion practice to Medicine Buddha, and then you just happened to encounter this information that provided incredible help to you. Um, it's just wonderful. It's something that I it will help the growing of faith. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, if I could share a bit more, um, my sister-in-law who lives in America also suddenly developed a knee pain. So she went to see a few doctors in America, and of course, American doctors said, operate, operate, operate. And she's Taiwanese. So she shared with her parents. The parents said, no, come back to Taiwan to see the Taiwan doctor and see what they suggest. And I thought that was a very good decision. But what happened was I tried to share with her. And I found the Dharma Drum Mountain, the eightfold mountain exercise, the meditation, sitting position, extremely wonderful. I do it like twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, because it helps my neck. And so I tried to share with her, and I shared with my brother and push it to her. But there is zero interest. They only prefer to listen to the Taiwan TCM doctors now. So I know just now you shared, the person is not ready to receive, just keep
Mhm.
quiet, right? Let the person just discover on her own. I mean, my brother said he's trying to tell her, but she doesn't want to listen. So how, right? So yeah, so maybe the Taiwan doctors can help her. I'm on the right
And
track, right?
And you can support her in all of the ways that she will allow you to support her. So just because she didn't resonate with what you were sharing doesn't mean that you shouldn't continue to reach out and try to be helpful and supportive. That's the heart of the Bodhisattva, is one that is endlessly supportive. And a lot of times we don't have the right tools for the job. That's actually one of the things that it says in the about the first ground, that the most natural of the beneficial actions of a bodhisattva at the first stage to participate in is helpful words, supportive words, because the wisdom hasn't increased to the point where you can see with great specificity the causes and conditions that are at work. And so the 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 greatly skillful activities can't be given rise to, but we still do what we can. We still know that there's that heart connection, and in all ways that we can, we support them. Sometimes we just support them by like, oh, okay, that's what you're doing. Well, uh, call and let me know how it goes.
诶，阿弥陀佛。
Amitofo. Oh, any other questions? Well, thank you again all so much for coming. This was a very lively to do, and I'm just so happy to be able to share a sutra that you might not have looked into otherwise. I wish to transfer any and all merit generated from today's presentation to all sentient beings in the 10 directions and 3 time periods. May all sentient beings be free from suffering. May all sentient beings be free from the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings awaken to their true nature. Amitofo.